Retirement income planning isn't just about looking at accounts over time. It's not just about your investments. It is understanding how everything works together. So your Social Security, your retirement accounts, your taxes, your other income sources, and how those decisions support the life that you want to live in retirement. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to empower and educate women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner with over 25 years of experience, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. Joining me once again is Wendy McConnell. Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna go ahead and push us forward into this episode because number one, I think you might have some interesting thoughts as we go through it. But number two, it's something I'm extremely passionate about. So I know I'm gonna get into the weeds a little bit, but that's okay too.
Okay.
So today's episode, it's kind of interesting. It was inspired by something that came up while I was actually a guest on another podcast recently. And during that conversation, the host made an interesting comment. He's actually a male as well. But there's this stat that's going around quite a bit in the financial services world that 70% of women will change financial advisors within 12 months of losing a spouse. Now, I think the stat is actually around a spouse passing away, but it's kind of gotten mingled in with divorce and all these other things. So in general, probably reasonably accurate still. And there's a lot of reasons why that stat is realistic. We're going to necessarily get into that now. I've touched on that in a few other episodes. But one of the things that he suggested is that when women do change financial advisors, they will often intentionally seek out a woman advisor. And to be completely clear, I don't doubt this happens because I know it does. But what it got me thinking is because actually my business is we primarily focus on working with women who are going through retirement on their own. But it got me thinking about what I think maybe is the more important conversation isn't necessarily who the advisor is, but what questions women should be asking before hiring a financial advisor or changing financial advisors. And so today, what I want to do is share 7 questions I think, and again, my opinion, take it for what that's worth, but 7 questions I think every woman should ask before hiring a financial advisor. And I'm not the one to make this about telling you who to choose, but to help you feel more confident, more informed, and of course, better prepared to decide what's right for you.
Sounds good.
All right, so let's go with question 1. So first question, how will you help me make an educated and informed decision about working with you? So before you hire one, I think it's important to understand whether that advisor has a clear, identifiable process for helping you decide if working together makes sense. And when that decision to hire that advisor, when are you actually expecting that decision to be made? And when I talk about a process, what I think, we're talking about a thoughtful advisor should be able to explain what happens first, what's step 1, what happens next, and then again, at what point will you be asked to decide whether to move forward with that advisor or not? In other words, you should know whether that decision to hire is expected before the first meeting, is it expected after the first meeting, or only after you've had time to think through the recommendations, ask questions. When exactly are you going to be hiring that advisor? When are you going to be making that decision? And I would share one example being what I call our Simply Retirement Roadmap process. And of course, this is not the only way to do it, but to me, it clearly illustrates what an identifiable process looks like. So in our case, the first step is we try to keep it intentionally simple. It is a short 20-minute get to know you call. And that conversation isn't about selling or recommending anything. It's just an easy first step to help determine whether it even makes sense to continue that conversation, to continue to that next step, that's step 2. And of course, for us, it's important that the determination is made together. It's not a one-sided decision. But just as an example, if you are 45 years old, 20 years from retirement, maybe you're primarily focused on education or providing education for your children, or maybe paying off student loans, we're probably not the right fit. And it's not that I don't understand those things. It's just that that's not what we do every single day. But if you're on the other hand, if you're 60 years old or older, maybe you recently lost a husband, you received a life insurance payout, you've got multiple IRA accounts now that you got to deal with. Maybe you're not sure about what your Social Security decisions are or what your options are with Social Security, and just simply feeling overwhelmed on how to put all these pieces together. That's what we do every single day. So what is that process to help you to make sure that you, as the potential client, that you feel listened to, educated, and confident about when and how the decision to move forward will be made?
Okay. So you can't be too young, but don't wait too long, but get it in there.
Well, so it's not in terms of from the age standpoint, it's more about, again, as our firm focuses on women over 55 who are making decisions around retirement income and Social Security and tax distributions and tax implications of those distributions versus somebody, again, so maybe in their 40s who's making different decisions. They're trying to figure out, how do I save for retirement, or how do I pay for education? It's about finding the right advisor for your circumstances. And we're going to provide some clarity around that as we go through some of the additional questions.
Okay.
And that's really what we're transitioning to question 2. How will you help me understand my options as recommendations are being made? And this question doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask the advisor for advice on which option they believe is best. Of course, that's going to be part of their role. And you may even have those that I have experienced that say, just tell me what to do. And that's okay too. But what matters is how they arrive at those recommendations. A good advisor should be able to clearly explain why a specific strategy was recommended, what were the other options that may have been considered, and to me, most importantly, how did that recommendation tie directly to your goals, your values, your worries, or even your concerns? How was that recommendation arrived at? And asking this question can also give you insight into whether that advisor is truly listening to you. And I think here's something that's really important. If you ever get that feeling that the answer is basically, you need to do this because I said so, or if you feel somehow dismissed when asking questions or trying to ask for clarification, that's your sign to basically grab your stuff and sprint out the door.
Get going.
It is 2026, but I know this still happens because I still hear the stories. And as I said before, this is one of those areas where, unfortunately, our industry, the financial services, financial advisors have continued to fail women for many, many years. I do think to some extent it's getting better, but we definitely still have a long way to go. But just know that you deserve explanations, not dismissals, education, if that's what's important to you, and not being intimidated into making a decision or being closed hard. If you feel like it's a sales process instead of a process for helping you make a decision, again, that probably gives you an idea that you may need to look in a different direction.
I think it's probably important to point out that women tend to be very polite, and they often feel like they have to say yes once they speaking mostly for myself. If I start a process, if I feel like I've taken your time, now I feel like I owe you, which is wrong. I shouldn't feel that way, but a lot of women do. So make it easy for them to make either decision.
Right. Well, and I think in continuing with and stepping back just a bit to question 1, when you think about that identifiable process, again, we try to keep it relatively easy. It's basically, we have a 3-step process. Introductory call just to get to know each other. If we decide to move to step 2, that's our first meeting where we're talking about your goals, what's important to you, what are we actually trying to accomplish. Step 3 is we're going to deliver our recommendations based on that conversation. Again, I think that's critically important. And then there's a step that's not really even in that step 1, 2, or 3, that is take your time. Take as much time as you feel like you need to. In fact, I'm going to tell you in that second meeting when I'm delivering those recommendations, I don't want you making a decision today. I want you to digest what we've gone through. There's going to be a lot of information. Again, we try to keep it as simple as reasonably possible.
But you're a nerd.
Very much so. But I'm going to say, I want you to take as much time as reasonably possible. Did you feel like you need to make a decision to hire us? Because I hope that this is the last time you ever have to make this decision.
Okay.
I don't want you having to make this decision again 2 years from now because we didn't meet the expectations, or we weren't on the same page, whatever the case might be, that this is a kind of a decision you feel so confident in, you hopefully never make that decision ever again.
Good to know.
All right. Question 3. What experience do you have working with women nearing or in retirement, especially after these major life events like a divorce or being widowed? Now, to be completely honest, I know this is going to be one of those that's going to be hard to evaluate. Again, not because it isn't important, but simply because many women that we work with or that we have conversations with, they've never gone through these situations before. So if you've recently experienced a life event or you weren't heavily involved in the financial decision-making in the past, it can be difficult to know whether an advisor truly understands what you're facing. And again, that's completely normal. But here, I'm going to give you a tell. Here's how you can figure out whether this is potentially the right person. In my experience, one of the clearest indicators is whether that advisor demonstrates a strong understanding of taxes and Social Security and how those 2 areas fit into your retirement planning.
Yeah, that's when your nerdiness comes in handy.
Absolutely. As you can see, as you know, how many episodes have we done on taxes and Social Security, right? Because I love this stuff.
Exactly. And that's what you want from your advisor.
But I think it's important that you as the potential client should feel encouraged, even I would say even empowered to ask questions here, because these decisions become obviously a critical part of your financial future. And I don't care how much money you have, incorrect guidance around Social Security and taxes can cost you thousands of dollars over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're in the position you're trying to make these decisions on your own, but you want to have that trusted advisor walking alongside of you to help provide this navigation.
Okay.
And of course, if these areas aren't addressed or aren't addressed in a thoughtful way, in a coordinated way, again, I think that could potentially be a red flag.
Got it.
Moving on to question 4. So how do you help clients plan for retirement income, including Social Security, and how different income sources work together? Again, this is what I think one of the biggest differentiators among advisors. And it's really, as you can probably tell, an extension of the previous question, but this is where you should really start to see the pieces of your retirement puzzle come together. Because retirement income planning isn't just about looking at accounts over time. It's not just about your investments. It is understanding how everything works together. So your Social Security, your retirement accounts, your taxes, your other income sources, and how those decisions support the life that you want to live in retirement. And if after that discussion, that picture still really feels jumbled or unclear, again, that's probably some important feedback for you as the potential client to say, again, maybe that's another red flag where I don't see how all this is working together. It may be time to consider other options. And here's why this question matters so much from my perspective. Again, the skill required to help someone accumulate wealth during their working years, very different from the skills required to help someone turn that wealth into sustainable income in retirement. Because it's not just a different phase of life. I think for a financial advisor, it's a very different discipline even. Because this is the thing, these decisions, these strategies aren't the same. Again, we talked about it earlier in the episode. The decisions a 35-year-old or a 45-year-old are making are much different than the 65-year-old.
Right.
And retirement income planning requires what I would consider a lot of ongoing study, real world experience. Again, if you want to throw the nerd term out there, again, I'm more than willing to accept it. But we know that tax law changes, when you hear these tax laws, yes, sometimes it's related to tax rates or whatever your federal tax rate is, but so many of these tax law changes impact retirement planning, whether it's required distribution rules and those types of things. A lot of these tax laws impact you. If you're in your 65, you're in your 60s, so many of these tax laws will directly impact you. And then you think about Social Security and how complex those rules are. And planning issues that uniquely affect women in retirement will, of course, evolve over time. So how do we stay on top of those issues? And staying current in these different areas, and again, it takes significant focus, continuing education, hours of work behind the scenes, in addition to just what's happening in those client meetings when you're sitting down with the advisor.
Okay.
And that's why I feel like it's so important, again, understanding retirement income, if that is actually a true focus of the advisor that you're potentially considering hiring, or if it's just something they just do on an occasional basis, or maybe even not at all. Because you definitely want to feel confident in the guidance that you're receiving and that it makes sense for where you're at today, not where you may have been 10, 20 years ago. All right, question 5. So are you able to provide references from women who have faced similar concerns or life transitions? I think this question is incredibly important. Number one, if an advisor is not willing to provide references, again, definitely could be a red flag, because we know that advisors can say a lot of things. As good as I think I may be at what I do, there's nothing like hearing directly from someone who has personal experience with working with the advisor or their team. I think this question can provide a great deal of confidence, again, as you're making that decision of, is this the right person that I can work with, that I can trust for the next 10, 20, 30 years?
People love to recommend these things too. It's like, if you ever go on a Facebook post of a woman asking, can you recommend a hairdresser? They're literally beating each other. No, go to mine. Mine's the best.
Right. If my wife is if anybody can ever, if my wife, get her trust, she will refer you to everybody. Everybody she knows, whether you need help or not, she's going to say, you need to talk to this person.
We love that.
Which is amazing. I love her for it, but that's just a great example. But I think one of the things I assume you may think about or agree with this, but it helps to know that there's others out there like you, that others that have these similar concerns, similar questions, similar uncertainty, and didn't have everything figured out when they started. because nobody really wants to feel like they're different or alone, especially when we're talking about financial decisions. We're talking about, and especially as something as important as hiring a financial advisor. Now, of course, in our case, we would always ask for permission first. And when we do provide those references, we typically want to provide 2 or 3 whose circumstances most closely match that person who may be considering hiring us. And this, again, it's not about selling. It's just simply about building trust. And again, hearing from someone who has already walked this path can make a huge amount of difference. And I know that and if our compliance folks don't like this, I'm more than happy to take it out. But anytime we've ever provided references, when that prospective client has had a chance to speak with one of our clients, I don't recall a time in the past where they didn't make the decision to move forward with us. So I think it's really important to have that level of confidence, to hear it from somebody else's mouth that, yes, this person has made a significant difference in my life and I would not go anywhere else.
Yep. That's what you want.
Hi, everyone. It's Eric. Hope you're enjoying today's episode. I want to take just a quick moment to share a resource I think you'll find really valuable. If you've ever asked yourself, how much is my Social Security reduced if I file early? Or am I eligible for benefits as a spouse, surviving spouse, or even after divorce? You're not alone. That's why we created our ultimate guide to women's Social Security success. It includes 6 of our most popular Social Security guides and checklists for women. Inside, you'll find a 2026 quick reference guide with key Social Security amounts and limits to be aware of, along with 5 additional guides and checklists to help you make more informed decisions about eligibility and filing strategies. You can download it for free at womenssocialsecurityguide.com. Keep it handy wherever you may be in the decision-making process. Now, back to the episode. All right, question 6. And I think this is important as well. So once I've hired you, what happens next? How do you help me adapt when things change? So when we first work with a client to build their retirement plan, we talk a lot about that, getting from point A, where you're at today, to point B, where you see yourself or where you want to be in the future. And then we build those strategies and recommendations around that. But here's something I always share very early on. That plan, as good as I think we are at it, it's only as good as about the next 24 hours after we give it to you. Because something's going to change. We see it on a very daily basis. Life changes, the markets change, the economy changes, whatever it is. And the way I kind of compare it to, think about this like a pilot's flight plan. And there's always plan A. What's the best plan based on the information available at the time? But once you take off, there's going to be turbulence. There's going to be changes along the way. A pilot never actually follows that flight plan exactly as originally was laid out, regardless of how long or short the flight might be. And here's an example we use in our practice where we build what we call guardrails into our retirement income plans. And it's very simply saying, okay, we've got an upper guardrail that helps us indicate when it may be reasonable to increase your income in retirement. And we've got a lower guardrail that helps us indicate when it may make sense to temporarily reduce your income during turbulent times, right? Keeping with that flight plan theme. But maybe we find some type of tailwind along the way and maybe we can increase the income. We can get to our destination a little sooner. But again, there's always going to be turbulence no matter how great the plan is. There's going to be turbulence along that way, which may mean we need to slow down a little bit, might need to tap the brakes. But it might also mean we got to go a completely different direction to get to our location.
Okay.
But I think it's always helpful to know what those adjustments could be in advance, not waiting until you find yourself in the middle of a storm trying to figure things out. And for us, we review that plan in every single meeting during good times, not so good times, because the confidence to stick with your plan when things aren't going as well comes from advanced preparation. So what is it that advisor helps you do? How do they educate you about when and how do we make changes as we go through the years together?
Yeah, because that's the one thing you can count on is change.
Absolutely. Last one, and I think this is kind of a personal thing for me, is question 7, what is your why? Don't be afraid to ask your advisor why they do the work that they do. Why do they serve the people that they serve? Women often want to understand what is that advisor's story, especially when you're working with a male advisor such as myself who focuses on women. Because skepticism is naturally reasonable, right? And for me, this work that I do is very personal. I've talked about this on previous episodes, but being raised by a single mother who's now facing many of these same retirement decisions as our clients face. She hates me telling this story, but she made a Social Security decision that has likely cost her thousands of dollars. Not at all because she's not smart, but because the information wasn't clear. These things aren't taught in school. You don't go to school. They don't teach Social Security decisions when you're in college or in high school or elementary school. They don't get taught anywhere else, really. And then I think about my grandmother, who's going to be 91 in April. She's been a widow for nearly 30 years. And the man I call daddy, my grandfather, wasn't there to walk through retirement with her. And that experience isn't unique. You see, at some point in their lives, the majority of women will be making these decisions on their own. So understanding what's your advisor's why, why is this person, why am I even talking, why are they talking to me? Why is it that you do what you do? I think is a really important question to understand as, again, you're making a huge decision to work with this advisor for what could be the rest of your life.
Hopefully, right?
Hopefully so. That is absolutely right.
Yeah. And the thing with women is and again, I won't say women, I'll just say myself. I am not a numbers person. I am not good with the keeping track of the numbers or the adding and all. I don't like it. So I don't want anything to do with it to begin with. So it's like hard to want to get involved myself because I don't like it. So you want to have somebody who's going to help you figure it out for you, but at the same time, keep you in the loop.
Right. Well, and I think there's such a big component to, we always talk about women's intuition. And I will be the first to admit my wife's intuition is way better than mine. There's so many circumstances where she just said, I think this doesn't really feel right. I think that, and I just missed it, but she got it right on the money. And I think that can be very much, even though you may not have experience making these financial decisions, or if you haven't had, you've done whatever it is you've done in your career and you're really good at that, but the financial piece may not be quite 100% there. But having that feeling that, yes, this is the right person. And it's really why I wanted to share these questions, is I think these questions can hopefully give you that peace of mind of saying, okay, yes, this makes sense. They have reasonable answers. I can feel confident about this decision as I move forward, again, over the next 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it might be. Now, I want to throw in just what I would call a bonus question, because one of the things you notice up to this point, one question I haven't really directly addressed is, how do you get paid, or what is your fee? And it doesn't mean you shouldn't ask this question, because I do think it is extremely important to fully understand how an advisor gets compensated, whether that's through fees, commissions, some combination of both of those, whatever it might be. But here's what I believe is even more important. And that is, before focusing solely on what the fee is, you should first understand the value you're receiving in return for that fee. So here's what I would suggest that you ask yourself. Am I confident that the value I receive from this advisor is going to exceed the fee that I'm going to be paying? And not just by a little bit, but hopefully by a meaningful multitude. And the value could show up in different ways. And that is, it could be knowing that your advisor is going to be there to walk alongside you when these decisions feel overwhelming. It could be having confidence in your investment, your planning strategies actually align with your goals. But it could also be avoiding costly mistakes that could end up costing you way far more than what that advisory fee might be. Or it might just simply be sleeping better at night, knowing that you have a plan and you have somebody helping you navigate that plan.
Peace of mind.
Absolutely. And some of that value can be measured numerically, some of it can't. But I think it all matters. And once you understand the value that's being delivered, now that fee conversation has proper context. Because the real question, I don't think, is, what is your fee? It's, is this advisor worth it for me?
Yeah, works for me.
Excellent. So just some final takeaways before we wrap everything up. So before hiring or changing a financial advisor, again, I think the most important thing to remember is you're not just choosing a person, you're choosing a process, a relationship, and a way that decisions are going to be made. So obviously the questions that we covered today are designed more to help you understand whether the advisor has, a clear and thoughtful way of working with prospective clients, whether recommendations are explained in a way that helps you make informed decisions, whether that advisor truly understands the phase of life that you're in, whether those pieces of your financial picture come together in a way that makes sense, whether others like you have been supported through these similar decisions, whether there's a clear plan for what happens after you hire them, how is change going to be handled, and then whether that advisor's value and motivations align with what matters to you. Now, actually, because this is a retirement podcast for women, we tailored these specific questions we covered today. We're going to be primarily focused on the retirement phase of life, but I think it's also, especially for women that are planning on their own, but I think it's important to understand that the framework that we talked about can really apply regardless of your life stage. So if you are earlier in your journey, you can still use the same framework. You just want to replace some of the examples of concerns with what's relevant to you. So just some quick examples. So instead of retirement income, you might replace that with savings and accumulation. Or instead of Social Security decisions or questions, you might replace those with education funding or 529 planning. Distribution might be replaced with just cash flow or career transitions. So the structure in general can stay the same. You just want to change some of the details about the questions, again, to make sure you're addressing your specific issues. Because we're not necessarily trying to catch the advisor with the wrong answer. It's just about making sure helping you feel confident, informed, and supporting you as you make one of the most important financial decisions of your life. And if something doesn't feel clear, it doesn't feel right, again, take that information and use it in your best interest to say, hey, is this that I'm not quite understanding it? I need to ask additional questions, or do I simply need to look in a different direction?
Okay.
All right. So any other thoughts or suggestions that you think I missed?
No, I just think that the most important thing is for you to ask questions and to not feel like you can't ask questions. So that's really very important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just the confidence to ask the questions and keep asking questions. There's nothing wrong. You should never feel bad about asking questions. It's one that, to hear the idea of there's never a bad question. When you're making a decision as critical as this, you just keep asking questions till you have the level of confidence that you need to make the right decision or what you think is the right decision. And again, if you ever figure out, think that maybe this is a red flag, never feel hesitant to look a different direction if you think you need to. So if you'd like to walk through these questions in the context of your own situation to better understand how decisions would be made, what guidance might look like, and whether working together even makes sense, that's exactly what our Simply Retirement Roadmap is designed to help with. As I talked about earlier, the first step is simply a short, no pressure, get to know you conversation. Because it's not about recommendations or commitments. It's about helping you get clear and whether there's a path forward that feels right for you. If this sounds helpful, you can learn more about our specific process, maybe even schedule a conversation at getmysimplyretirementroadmap.com. That's it for today's episode. For all the links and resources that we've mentioned, you can visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.